She was tied to a fallen tree less than 100 yards from her husband's ranch. Close enough to hear the windmill creak. The sun beat down hard, bleaching the grass pale, and the tree lay where it had fallen years ago, roots torn up like a warning no one bothered to clean. Rope wrapped her wrists and waist, pulled tight against the trunk, dress torn and dirty, belly rounded beneath the cloth so obvious it hurt to look at. She wasn't hidden. She was placed close enough to be found and close enough to be talked about. Hank Caldwell saw her because the road cut past Mercer land, and because he'd taken that road 100 times before without ever seeing something like this. His horse slowed on its own. Leather creaked. The Mercer ranch sat quiet behind her. Barn doors shut, house still, as if nobody was home, or nobody wanted to be seen. A windmill groaned once, slow and tired. Hank slid down from the saddle, boots crunching dry dirt. Eyes never leaving the rope. She stirred, head rolling slightly against the bark. Her lips moved. "Don't do that, please." It wasn't a scream. It was the kind of voice that told Hank this had already happened before. It was the kind of plea that came after the shouting had already failed. Hank stopped where he was. He was 49, widowed, a rancher who'd learned the hard way that panic made things worse. He took off his hat and set it on a fence post where she could see it. Then he set his canteen on the ground, a few steps away from her, not pushing it into her hands. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. Her eyes flicked toward him, then past him, toward the house behind the trees. Hank stepped closer, slow, careful not to spook the horse still standing nearby, reins loose, calm as if this were just another stop. Up close, the rope looked new, not old ranch line, not frayed, bought. He knelt beside the fallen tree, the bark rough under his knee, and slid his knife free. Her breath caught. "Don't," she whispered. "I'm cutting you loose," Hank said. "Steady." He worked the blade under the rope, sawing slow so it wouldn't snap back. The fibers fought him. Whoever tied her wanted it tight. When the rope finally gave, her arms dropped heavy like they'd forgotten how to move. She gasped and curled inward, one hand going straight to her belly. Hank leaned back, hands open, giving her space. He didn't touch her. He waited. That was when he noticed what bothered him most, not the way it was tied, but the rope itself. It was too new, too clean, the kind you buy in town. Not the old frayed line a ranch keeps hanging on a nail. They went and paid for it. He let the rope fall and looked at the ground. Boot prints circled the tree. Deep heels back and forth like somebody waited for a show. He stood and looked toward the ranch house again. No movement, no sound, just the windmill creaking like it had nothing to do with this. "What's your name?" Hank asked. She swallowed. "Evelyn." He nodded once. "Evelyn." "I'm Hank." She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed on the house. Hank took off his coat and laid it across the tree trunk, close enough for her to reach. She hesitated, then pulled it around her shoulders. That mattered. "Can you stand?" he asked. She tried, winced, and shook her head. Hank didn't lift her. He brought his wagon around instead, laying blankets down, turning his back while she shifted over, giving her dignity where he could. As he tied the horse, his fingers brushed the rope again. That rope stayed in his mind like a splinter. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of hay and dust from the Mercer place. "She's his," Evelyn said suddenly, voice flat. Hank looked at her. "My husband," she went on. "He said the baby wasn't." Hank didn't ask who she meant. That wasn't an accident. Hank said quietly. Evelyn nodded. "He said people would see," she whispered. "He said it would end the talk." Hank climbed up onto the wagon seat, reins in hand. The ranch behind them stayed silent. Too silent. He glanced once more at the fallen tree, the rope still lying there like someone might come back for it. Hank kept his eyes forward, but his thoughts stayed behind, on Mercer land, on that rope, and on how close she'd been left to the man who was supposed to protect her. If her husband wanted her found, Hank wondered, what was he planning to do once the town started asking why? The wagon didn't pick up speed until the Mercer ranch fell out of sight. Hank kept the reins loose, letting the horses walk steady, the way you do when you don't want to draw attention. Evelyn lay on the blankets, turned slightly on her side, one hand still resting over her belly like she was holding something in place. They rolled past a dry wash, then a stretch of fence with posts leaning every which way. The kind of fence no one fixes because everyone knows whose land it is, Mercer land. Hank didn't like how close it all felt. "You hungry?" he asked finally. She nodded once. He reached behind the seat and handed back a piece of bread and some dried beef, unwrapped slow so the sound wouldn't startle her. She ate like someone who had been told not to take too much for a long time. They reached his place just as the sun started to drop enough to take the edge off the heat. Hank's ranch wasn't much. A low house, a barn that leaned but held, a corral patched more times than he could count. Wasn't welcoming, but it was quiet. He helped her down from the wagon without lifting, just steadying her elbow until her feet found the ground. Inside, he set a chair by the table and poured water into a tin cup. She drank, then stopped, breathing slow. "You're safe here for the night," Hank said. "For the night," she repeated, like she didn't believe in longer promises anymore. He nodded. "Night's all I'm offering." That seemed to settle her. But underneath that, something fell off, like a room after someone leaves too fast. Evelyn spoke while he was washing his hands at the basin. He said it would be cleaner this way. She said, Hank didn't turn. He said if people saw me like that, they'd understand. Hank dried his hands slow. "Understand what?" "That I was a problem," she said. He looked at her then. She wasn't crying. She looked tired in a way that came from being argued with for too long. "Did he tie you himself?" Hank asked. She hesitated, then nodded. "He didn't rush," she added. "That's what scared me." Hank felt that rope again, like it was tightening somewhere behind his ribs. Outside, a tin can rattled against the fence, just once. Hank froze. The sound came again, faint, like a foot brushing it by accident. He moved to the window without hurrying. Nothing there, just the yard, the fence, the road beyond. He stepped onto the porch. The dirt near the gate showed marks that hadn't been there that morning. Fresh. Boots. Heavy at the heel. He didn't follow them. Instead, he went back inside and latched the door. "Someone out there," Evelyn whispered. "Maybe," Hank said. "Maybe not." It just wasn't comforting. He set his shotgun by the door, not leaning it where it looked dramatic, just resting it where it belonged. Gun moments were about timing, not noise. They ate in silence. After, Hank laid another blanket near the bed and took the chair by the wall. He just stayed. Sometime later, the sound came again, this time closer. A footstep, careful, measured, then the faint scrape of rope against wood. Hank stood, slow. A length of rope hung over the corral post, looped once, then twice like someone testing weight. No one in sight. Hank lifted it, felt the fibers, and his jaw set. Same rope, same message. Whoever had done this wanted him to see. He cut it loose and laid it flat on the ground. When he turned back, Evelyn was watching him. "They know where you live now," she said. Hank nodded. "And they know you saw," she added. "Yes," he said. She swallowed. "What happens in the morning?" Hank looked out toward the road that led to town, pale in the moonlight. "In the morning," he said, "we stop hiding." He didn't say how. If her husband was already writing the story out here in the dark, what kind of paper was he planning to use when daylight came? Morning came hot and clear, like it had no idea what had happened overnight. Hank was already up before the sun cleared the low hills, coffee barely touched, eyes on the road that led toward town. Evelyn sat at the table, hands wrapped around a tin cup, watching him the way people watch a door they are afraid will open. "We're going to Cheyenne," Hank said. She stiffened. "To the doctor," he added. "And to put our feet where people can see them." She nodded slowly. The wagon rolled out with the sun just climbing, dust puffing behind them in soft bursts. Neither of them looked back toward Mercer land, but both felt it there, like a weight on the shoulders. They reached the edge of Cheyenne before the town fully woke. Hank pulled up near the livery and helped Evelyn down, steady and careful. Eyes followed them, not staring, just noticing. "I'm going to send a message," Hank said. "Then we'll see a doctor." She looked at him. "Message to who?" "Someone who still answers when I ask," he said. Inside the telegraph office, the air smelled of ink and hot metal. The clerk barely looked up. Hank slid a few coins across the counter and spoke low, choosing his words like fence posts. He sent a short wire for Sheriff Rollins, just names and a place. Nothing more. He heard bootsteps on the boardwalk outside, unhurried, like they'd been waiting. A shadow crossed the office window, then stopped. When he turned back toward the door, it was already too late. "Morning, Caldwell." The voice came easy. Deputy Rourke stood just outside, one hand resting near his belt, the other holding folded paper. Behind him, Caleb Mercer stepped out of the shade like he had been there all along. That told Hank one thing clear. Mercer had not guessed, and Mercer had been watching. Clean shirt, calm face, a man who expected to be listened to. "Thought I'd find you here," Caleb said. "You always did like to do things proper." Evelyn shrank back without moving her feet. Rourke unfolded the paper slow, making sure people nearby could see the seal. "Got a complaint," he said. "Abduction, interfering with a lawful husband." He glanced at Evelyn. "Order says she goes back," Caleb sighed, like this was an inconvenience for him too. "We can do this easy," he said. Soft enough to sound kind, or we can make it hard. Hank didn't answer. He read the paper. He knew papers. This one was clean enough to fool a crowd, signed by a local justice, filed neat. Justice Hartwell put his name on it, the kind of judge who smiles at church and counts money on Monday. Rourke shifted his weight. "Let's not make a show," he said. A few people had stopped sweeping. A woman muttered that a wife belongs with her husband. A man spat and said Hank ought to mind his own ranch. The story was already starting to move. Evelyn grabbed Hank's sleeve. "Please," she said. "Not loud, not for them, not here." Hank raised a hand, just enough to ask for a breath. He stepped forward half a pace, putting himself between her and Caleb. "You didn't ask her," Hank said. Caleb smiled. "I don't need to." Rourke lifted his chin. "Paper says she's his," he said. The crowd leaned in. Hank felt it tipping. He moved without hurry. He drew his revolver slow, not pointing it at anyone, just lifting it into the air where it could be seen. A sharp crack split the morning. The shot went straight up. Horses jumped. Someone swore. The sound echoed off the buildings and then fell away, leaving a silence thick enough to chew. Hank lowered the gun and rested it back in the holster. "Everybody back," he said. "Nobody's getting dragged anywhere yet." Rollins wasn't here yet, but the town knew Hank wasn't a fool with a gun. Rourke stared at him. Caleb's smile slipped just a little. "You just made this worse," Caleb said. "Maybe," Hank replied. "Or maybe I stopped it from getting stupid." Evelyn's voice came small but steady. "I want to speak," she said. Rourke hesitated. Before anyone could answer, a voice cut in from behind. "That paper don't say he gets to tie her up." An old man stepped forward, hat in hand. Then another. The crowd shifted, unsure now. Caleb's eyes hardened. "You don't know what you're talking about," he said. Hank leaned close to Rourke. "This isn't over," Hank said quietly. "You know that." Rourke swallowed. "Doctor's on this street," he muttered. "After that, she goes back." Hank nodded once. "After that," he agreed. They walked, the crowd parting just enough, the weight of eyes pressing in. Inside the doctor's office, the door closed, shutting out the street. When they came back out, Rourke was waiting. So was Caleb. So was half the town now. Rourke cleared his throat. "Tomorrow morning," he said. "Courthouse. We settle this proper." Caleb leaned in close to Hank as they turned away. "You can't win on paper," he said, "and paper's all that matters." Hank met his eyes. "We'll see," he said. As they walked back toward the wagon, Hank felt the slip of folded paper press into his hand. A boy from the livery had brushed past him without stopping. Hank didn't look down until they were clear. Inside was a small note, just a name, and a word written crooked. Rope. Hank folded it back up, his jaw tightening. If Caleb thought paper would finish this, Hank thought, he was about to find out what happened when paper met proof. Hank did not open that note right away, not until he had Evelyn settled back in the wagon and pointed toward the quieter side of town. He kept his face plain while he drove, because a man like Caleb could read a grin from 50 steps away, and Hank had no interest in letting him know he had a lead. Evelyn watched the street through the wagon slats, shoulders tight, like every boot step out there was aimed at her. "You did good back there," Hank said, not looking at her. She let out a breath that sounded like it hurt. "I did not do anything. You stood on your own feet," Hank said. "Most folks don't even manage that when the whole town is looking." That got the smallest flicker in her eyes. Not hope, exactly, but something close enough to keep moving. Hank turned down a side lane and pulled up behind the livery, where the smells of hay and sweat and old leather made the world feel honest again. Hank stepped down slow and walked like he was there for nothing in particular. "Morning," Hank said. Noah did not look up. "You should not be talking to me." Hank nodded. "That is smart." He dropped a coin into the boy's palm like it was payment for sweeping. Noah finally glanced up. "I did not mean to get you shot." Hank kept his voice low. "You wrote rope?" Noah swallowed. "Mr. Mercer bought new rope, not ranch rope, town rope. He bought a whole kill, and he did not want it on his account." Hank felt his gut tighten. "Where?" "General store." Noah said. "Mrs. Shaw, she keeps the ledger like it's scripture." Hank looked toward the street. "Why tell me?" Noah hesitated, then nodded toward Evelyn in the wagon. "My sister had a baby once. Folks said things. Men said things. I don't like men saying things." Hank did not praise him. He just nodded. "'Cause that was how you respected courage in a boy who was trying to act older than he was." "One more thing," Hank said. "Boots, Mr. Mercer has a notch in his heel, like a bite taken out." Noah tapped his own boot heel to show it. "He drags a little when he's mad." Hank thanked him with another nod and walked away without rushing, like a man who did not have a fire under his feet, but he did. He drove straight to the general store, hitched the team, and helped Evelyn down. She stayed close to the wagon, head lowered, coat tight around her shoulders. Mrs. Marjorie Shaw stood behind the counter with a pencil tucked into her hair and a look that could freeze butter. "Hank," she said, "if you are here to buy nails, buy nails. If you are here to borrow trouble, take it outside." Hank leaned an elbow on the counter. "I am here for rope." Hank kept it plain. A woman was tied up near Mercer Land. "New rope. Your kind of rope." Mrs. Shaw did not flinch, but her pencil stopped moving. "I don't mix in family matters," she said. Hank nodded. "Neither do I. Not usually. But someone used your rope to do something a decent town will not want on its conscience." Mrs. Shaw tapped the ledger like it was a rifle on a rack. "You walk out with my page, and you walk out with my trouble," she said. Hank nodded. "Then come tomorrow and say it out loud." Hank replied, "Say it was your book, your hand, your store. If you want this town to keep calling you honest, it has to hear your voice, not just my mouth." That word conscience landed, because Mrs. Shaw was the kind of woman who pretended she had none, but kept a clean Bible under the counter anyway. She turned, pulled a heavy ledger from a shelf, and set it down with a thump. "I am not letting you tear up my book," she said. "I wouldn't dare." Hank replied, "I like walking out of stores on my own legs." She flipped pages, the pencil tapping along rows, lips moving as she read. Then her face changed, just a shade. "There," she said. Hank leaned in. It was a clean entry on the surface. Rope, 1 coil, paid cash, signed with a name Hank did not recognize, the kind of name a man uses when he does not want to be remembered. Hank let the silence sit. Mrs. Shaw frowned. "That handwriting is not mine. Someone wrote that after the fact." Hank looked at her. "Who has your book?" She hesitated. "Clerk Voss has been in here. Says he's checking receipts for county business." Hank felt his jaw tighten. Voss was already part of this, just like he had smelled. Mrs. Shaw lowered her voice. Hank, you take that page and you make an enemy. You already have one. Don't go collecting them like horses. Hank tapped the ledger line with one finger. I'm not collecting. I am counting. Mrs. Shaw glanced toward Evelyn through the window, then back to Hank. She reached under the counter and pulled out a small bundle of papers tied with string, delivery slips. This came with the last shipment, she said. Rope is marked by the supplier seal. Folks don't notice that. I do. It does not prove a crime by itself, she said, but it proves where it came from, and that matters when someone is lying. She handed him a slip with a stamped mark. Faint but clear, Hank folded it and tucked it inside his shirt. When he stepped back outside, a man on the boardwalk was already watching him too closely. Not a deputy. Not a friend. Just a pair of eyes that would carry news. Hank climbed onto the wagon seat and clicked the reins. They had barely made it 2 streets before a rider came hard around a corner.